So I grew up in this really small town called Millshoe, Texas, and super far west Texas. I had this childhood dream of becoming a SEAL, but I didn't have the intellectual ability or the physicality to become a SEAL. And I had this crazy childhood. I had these amazing parents, but he was a Texas judge, petroleum technology degree guy, theology degree, Baptist, Southern Baptist preacher, but I was this wild kid. And I might as well had a mohawk and tattoos. I even asked my mom when I was real little, can I get a tattoos and can I get a mohawk? And she was like, you can do whatever you want, son, just don't ride motorcycles. And so I took that and ran with it. And I loved being outside and playing Army with my little brother, but I just hated school. And eternity could probably be explained by how my dad, the length of time my dad tried to teach me math and stuff. And he was always super frustrated, and they would discipline me and punish me and stuff, take away my BB gun, then take away my shotgun, as a kid. And all I wanted to do was go hunt, and I didn't understand school whatsoever. So eventually, my parents end up just taking me out of school at like 13 years old. And then they see that I'm this wild kid, and how are they going to get me from 13 years old to becoming a SEAL? Or, probably nobody believed that I'd ever become a SEAL, but how are they going to get me to the military at least, get this wild kid? Because they realized that I was different than everybody else and not in the best way possible. In fact, they begged the high school coach to play me in football, and he was like, ma'am, if I played Jimmy, I would get fired from the school district. That's how unathletic I was. But I had this heart of a lion, and I knew what I wanted, but I was pissed off because I didn't have the body, I didn't have the mind. I was always really frustrated. I wasn't picking up what the other kids were picking up. I had severe ADHD. And so my mom tricks me to going to Texas Bible School. It's called Texas Bible Institute, right? They changed it to college because it sounds like a mental facility. And so I go there at like 14 years old. My mom tricks the dean, it's not a Forrest Gump situation, but she tricks the dean. I get in to Texas Bible School. I'm with all these older dudes that are troubled, like 20s, 30s, and 40s. And I'm like the youngest guy there. And so I end up cleaning like 400 toilets a day. That's 100 toilets 4 times a day. Like these rows and rows of toilets in the heat of the summer in Austin, Texas. It's humid, it's nasty, it's miserable. I'm begging my mom to come back. She told me I was only going for a week, and now I'm getting fights with the kids there, the other guys there, and they're shipping these inner city Houston troubled young kids to this Texas Bible School and learning about God and stuff. And I'm just miserable there. I'm hot, and I'm cleaning all these nasty toilets every single day, 4 times a day. But I start to like love it. I start to understand like discipline, and I need this routine and discipline. And I start to look at it like I'm in the Marines or I'm in the Army or military. And so I'm like running during the day, but I eventually get a staph infection from cleaning all these toilets, like terrible boils. And I have this like big boil on the back of my head, and I like this girl. I thought this girl was sexy, in the school. And she's sitting behind me, and I have this big boil, and it eventually pops on the desk and stuff. And I'm just like, oh my God, I'm miserable here. I end up doing like a 9-month stint there, like a prison term, like a year there. And got my certificate. I graduate there. I go home. I still got like 2 years to kill, so my dad just puts me on the tractor. They give me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in a sack lunch and an apple and a jug of this water, and I just drive tractor all day long. I'm talking sun up till sundown. I shoot prairie dogs on the way there, so I'm always working on my marksman skills and all this stuff. And I take this ASVAB, and my dad's super disappointed. Everybody's disappointed because I scored like a 17, and I'm almost 17 years old. 17 is probably the worst ASVAB score you can get because I didn't know anything. I didn't know any math or anything like that. And so there's no way I could do the SEALs. So I end up finding out that with a GED, if I could just get a GED and I could just get 17 credits of college or 18 credits of college, from the community college, pottery, bowling, no academic stuff whatsoever, then I can join the Marine Corps with my parents' signature. So I joined the Marine Corps I was barely 17. Both my parents signed me off, kicked me out the door. I go to Amarillo MEPS. I go to boot camp. I find out that it's just like Full Metal Jacket. I don't know what it's like now, but it was terrible. They slugged me in the stomach for being the youngest guy there. I'm like, this can't be legal, And then I go to infantry school. Then I go to my the Camp Horno, 1st Marines, where it's just like a bunch of thugs, steroided out, drinking beer. This is before 9/11, so there's a lot of hazing going on. They make me clean my toilet in the floor with a half a grapefruit, and then you got to eat it. And I'm like, I swear to God, I'm never gonna, I'm gonna get revenge on these guys. Count of Monte Cristo, because that was my favorite, movie. And I'm gonna never do this to my new guys ever. Well, I do a deployment, then I do another deployment. 9/11 happens. Go to Afghanistan, do long-range patrols, blah, blah, blah. Come back, and my junior Marines, I do the same exact thing because that's all I knew. And so I find myself hazing these guys, beating these guys, doing terrible stuff. And I always felt kind of bad about that, right? And so I'm like, dude, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, there's like man-sized rats serving fire watch in my barracks. I'm like, the living conditions were absolutely terrible. And so I end up getting out of the Marines. I'm pissed off. I missed my war. I went to Afghanistan, whatever. So I come back home, flip on the big screen TV in my old unit from 3-1s in Fallujah, kicking down doors. And so I'm like this depressed guy. I go in the kitchen. I start chugging a bottle of Pisano, my dad's wine. He's like, what are you doing in my kitchen drinking my wine? And I'm like, man, I can't believe I need to go on Prozac or something. He said, you don't need Prozac. Put down my wine. He goes, you need to get back in the war. Like, stop, like, put down the bottle, get back in war. If that's what you want to go do it. You've always wanted to be a SEAL, go do it. So this time I take the ASVAB, I score like a 1 or 2 points underneath. So I'm gaining knowledge, gaining experience, but I still score beneath the ASVAB requirement 50 on the mechanical comprehension for the SEALs. But while I'm there, there's a Green Beret there. And he's like, hey man, today's not your day, but maybe tomorrow is. And so I'm like, what do you mean? He grabs me by the shoulder. He's like, hey, you need to go to this place called Blackwater. I'm like, what's Blackwater? It was the very, very beginning of Blackwater. And so I ended up going to Blackwater. I ended up going through the vetting process. I put a bunch of stuff on my on a piece of paper, acting like it's some kind of resume, a bullet list of stuff I've done. And they accept me because they needed bodies, at the time to fill up these contracts. Eric Prince was there. He was there personally. And it's right when the guys got hung on the bridge in Fallujah in 2004. And so I go through the vetting process. I fly straight into Amman, Jordan. I meet this other Blackwater guy that's about to go into country with me, and we're prior service members now. We're Marines or recon, and I can't remember exactly what he was, but he had this tattoo around his neck. It said "cut here" with scissors, like dot dot, and he looked crazy. I think he was in the Hells Angels for a while, hung out with those guys. And so me and him are on this like twin La Casa plane, and we go straight into Baghdad. It looks like hell, And this is my first real experience with the craziness of real war in an urban environment. And as we're like falling out of the sky as this like a maneuver for the anti-missile stuff, we fall out of the sky like this and then barely land on the wing, come in, and we're like throwing up in the bags. It's a really rough ride. We get out of the plane, mortars are hitting. There's this like rogue Mad Max in the Thunderdome type team that picks us up. We go across the 6-mile stretch of road called Death Road, Route Irish. There's like dead animals, dead bodies on the road. It's like total chaos and war. I get out of the truck with this guy with the cut on neck thing, and he's like, I'm ready to die, and he's got this cut on the neck tattoo. He gets out of the car first. When we get to the man camp, I get out second. They pick him up and they say, hey, you're going to another team, just because he got out of the car first. And they pick him, they say, you're going to another team. The very next day, he was blown out the back of an SUV, an armored SUV in Blackwater. And he had a big chunk of shrapnel go right into his shrapnel, his neck tattoo. And so I'm like, man, this place is crazy. And they put me in a convoy, and I'm like the trunk monkey for a while. We go out the door. My first mission, we go out the door, and the front window's just smashed by a sniper rifle bullet. And I'm in the back laying there just like this. They're like, don't say anything, just shut up and lay there as a trunk monkey position in the back until you learn the roads. And I'm laying there like I'm in a coffin. This guy that's driving, smoking a cigarette, and his window just gets smashed by a sniper round, and he never flinches. He just exhales his cigarette. He goes, "Oh, that was cool." And they're like, "Yeah, that was crazy, bro." You know, and the window's like it's thick plexiglass, stops it. But I'm like, man, you know, sometimes they weren't paying you enough. Sometimes they're paying you too much. And so I ended up doing every position in Blackwater, every position, the door gunner to Little Bird door gunner. And eventually I become a team leader. And guys are dying everywhere. We're taking rocket attacks. We're like the ambulance service for the Blackwater. So we're going out when rockets would hit at night. We would do like 8 missions during the day in the heat of the day in the red zone. And then when we come back, we would be getting rocketed by these 74 millimeter telephone pole sized rockets. And these things would just smash into our camp, into the surrounding area. And we started going to rescue whoever was in trouble, whoever got hit. And I can remember going to one scene, and there was just a pile of guts on fire. And we would just go in, and I remember going there, and there was a doctor over here, an Army doctor, and he was blue like a purple Smurf, and he was smoking a cigarette. And I said, "How many are there? How many are there?" And this doctor was in shock. And he just held up his hand like this, and he like 4. And there was 4 bodies there in this pile of just burning guts. And my buddy tried to jump over it, and he slipped and fell into it. And so that was my experience in Blackwater. And then I went around the corner of this house, and there was this girl with the top of her head missing and bleeding out. And I had forgot about that incident where she's laying there and all that blood out. And it was so weird to see her around a building where the rocket had hit over here, and then this girl is just laying there in this blue dress, and the top of her head was cut off, this young girl, around this building. And I remember going around that building, and I felt like ice cold all over me. And at the time, I just brushed it off. And I called the guys over there, and I didn't know how that happened. And so we put her body and all the other bodies and sometimes a lot of bodies in 1 or 2 body bags, and then stacked them up in the truck and took them to the Baghdad hospital. That comes into play later on in my life when in therapy and stuff, because I had forgot about that. I had blocked that out. But the feeling that I had was ice cold, and the smells of war would later come into effect in my life. I always thought PTSD was for pussies. I always joked around about anybody with PTSD. I'd say, man, they're a pussy, bro. You know, it's just a cop-out. It's just an excuse, right? I was this tough, rough and tough guy in Blackwater and Marines and stuff. Well, I ended up being the team leader for the Nisar Square, the Baghdad's Bloody Sunday. The news acted like it was the same as the My Lai massacre, right? And so 17 civilians got killed there. I was the team leader for that event. I made the call to go out, and that's when, in 2007, that's when my life just flipped upside down. I still wanted to do the SEALs, but now there was all this legal trouble going on, legal battle. It was all over the news that we killed these 17 civilians. And so my life just became a wreck, and I started having to deal with all this death that I had seen in the last 4 years in Blackwater, and some of the stuff that I saw in the Marines. And so I still was thinking PTSD is a joke. I still was thinking that it's mental health things is just an excuse. But I started collapsing inside. My life started getting very dark. I started taking fentanyl. I started taking all kinds of pills. I started drinking all the time, washing it down with Jack Daniels. But I was still acting like everything's okay. But I would wake up at night in these sweats, and I'd hear these radios chirping and stuff. And so I know that I'm either going to die and drown myself in sorrow, and drown myself in medicine, in alcohol, or I got to do something with my life. I got to keep moving. I got to kick the can down the road, like my dad would say. Just kick the can down the road, and survive another day. Fake it till you make it. And so I see this cartoon of Finding Nemo with my niece. I'm drinking hard, but you ain't an uncle. You ain't a good uncle. You're not a good dad when you're doing this kind of stuff. And as I'm watching this pretty much stupid cartoon, at the very end, it says, keep swimming or keep moving forward in big letters on the screen. And I knew at that point that if I took another drink, if I took another fentanyl, a patch, or Vicodin, that I was going to die there, that I was going to die. So that switch had to flip. And I had to say, man, I'm going seal or no deal. I'm going all the way. So I go all out. I flush everything down the toilet. I get my life together. I start running until I throw up, and then I run farther than I can say. Sometimes I would cry and throw up because I was in a lot of pain, from not working out and all this. And so I started training for like a year hardcore. And I just threaded that needle through that needle of all the legal trouble coming down on us with the Blackwater case. And it looked like mission impossible to become a SEAL after that. It was very difficult to become a SEAL anyway, statistically, without all the baggage and all the drama and all the carnage that had already happened in my life. But I was just kicking the can down the road, And so I get into SEALs. I make it through training, had a couple setbacks here and there, finally get through it 2 years later, end up going to SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 1, the Little Black Subs. And then I knew chances of me dying or getting injured in the SEALs was high, was risky, especially in the unit that I was, where you die 4 hours a night on Draeger or Mottos or Mod 1s or Draegers for 26 weeks straight, for 4 hours a night. And so suddenly one day I have a major diving accident. I have an arterial gas embolism. It was a simple day dive where we were coming up and doing visit board search and seizures on ships. Well, my life just starts to kind of go downhill after that. I have this neurological issues and problems. They end up chambering me like for 2 weeks straight. They end up chambering me, long decompression chamber rides. I end up going to the emergency room. They're giving me morphine. That's pretty much the only thing that'll calm me down. I end up almost dying in the emergency room. It's dark. And every time I slip away and I'm dying, my team's around me, my wife's looking at me, and I've only been married to her for 2 months, and I told her this could happen, right? But every time I start slipping away, like I went from this like super elite, in shape dude one day, and then the very next day I'm dying in the emergency room, and everything's getting super dark, and I'm watching. I could hear my heartbeat on the monitor going beep, beep, 70, and then I'd watch it, and it would go 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, and then everything would black out. And they would run in with the shockers, run in with the adrenaline. I could smell it, and I'd come back too. And it was the most terrifying thing that I could ever imagine, because I didn't think this was possible. I didn't think I could have PTSD. I thought that was superhuman at this point, because from the time I was a little kid, I had this heart of a lion, and now I had trained, and I had built myself up intellectually, like I overdid everything. I overtrained my body. I wanted to be the best of the best because I was bullied in school. And so I wanted to be this Uberman, this overhuman, this monster, the bully's bully, And so now I'm dying and in this bed, and I finally come to. It takes me about a year of hardcore recovery. Then my best friend dies. My best friend, Brett Allen Merrihew, drowns. And then Matt Leathers, a teammate of mine in the sister platoon, drowns, comes up missing. Guys, best friends dying. A really good friend dies over here. And then my little brother ends up dying. And I had to clean up the aftermath in my mom's house. I came home from leave, and I had to smell that, and I was okay. I thought PTSD was for pussies. I thought it was all a joke. This hardcore dude. I had just recovered. I was starting to recover from this diving accident. But now I'm at home, and when I smelt that smell of my little brother, he was in my mom's bed. When I smelt that, my whole life, I knew from that moment that I smelt that smell. I had smelt that in my whole life, like in war. But I knew the moment I smelt that, my life was over for me. And so I started to go downhill major, and that kind of flipped some kind of switch in me to where I had to go into beast mode. I had to, be strong for my mom and my dad, and they just kind of relied on me to take care of and clean up the situation and be that pillar of strength. But every single night, I would go in my bathroom and I would just collapse in between the toilet and the trash can and just dry heave. And because I was tough, I was real tough on my little brother. I was hard on my brother, and I had this hardcore attitude. I had this like warrior mentality, like I'm too cool for school. I'm too tough. Like you suck it up, But inside, I'm like faking it. I'm like, this is just a mask, man. All of this is just a facade. The tattoo, everything's a mask because of me trying to portray somebody who I come from, this bullied kid, this little scrawny kid, no athleticism. Everybody always saying, you ain't never gonna be a SEAL. You ain't even gonna be a Marine, Jimmy. You ain't gonna do this. You ain't gonna do this. And so I was overcompensating. And so now that my little brother died, they called me the Texas Tornado in the SEALs. Like, I was wild. And after that, man, my hands stayed broken for 2 years straight. My hands would literally be broken, and I knew they were. My knuckles, you couldn't see my knuckles on my hands. And I would literally blast a guy as hard as I could for pretty much nothing at a bar. Blast him if he did anything. If he just slightly, because you're always partying in the SEALs, you're partying like the Guam Bomb 80s, you know what I mean? And so I would blast a guy. I would get a couple bottles bust over my head. Sometimes they don't break. Have a big goose egg while we're out there patrolling on a training op in Montana, Missoula. Crazy, crazy stories. I was wild. And I basically, I started developing a death wish. And here I am smashing 15 shots of Jack Daniels and doing everything else on the side. And my teammates are like, bro, how do you not have PTSD? Because they're still seeing this facade. They're still seeing me with this mask on. And I'm like, bro, that's, PTSD is for pussies, man. PTSD, it's not true. Like, they're like, how have you seen all this combat? Then you went to the SEALs in Blackwater. And I'm like, it's all BS, man. But at the same time, I'm slamming those shots of Jack Daniels. And so my best friend dies. I have this major dive accident. I still have neurological issues going on. I'm pretty much crippled inside, but I'm acting like I'm not. I'm still a team leader sniper. And on top of that, I'm having to go testify for the Blackwater case. And so eventually, my medical issue gets so bad neurologically with the dive stuff, they send me to James Haley Veterans Polytraumatic Ward, where I start to recover. From there, the psychiatrist, her name was Dr. Thor, with a big hammer above her office. She calls me in. I say, look, I know that you tell everybody that they have PTSD here. I know I got to come here an hour, like a mandatory hour, but just tell me your shit and I'm done, because I'm leaving. Like, I know you're going to say I have PTSD, but I don't believe it. And she said, okay, Jimmy, I'll make you a deal. And I said, what's the deal? She goes, you go tell your wife that you don't have, she goes, I'm going to tell you what I think that you have. She goes, you have severe PTSD. If you go and tell your wife this on the phone and she laughs like you're laughing, then you don't ever have to come see me again. But if she doesn't laugh, then you have to promise me you'll come back and do this full exposure therapy. So I go tell my wife, and she's dead quiet on the phone, and I'm laughing. I'm like, can you believe this, Dr. Thor? She said this. And my wife is like, you need help bad, man. And so I go through this exposure therapy. It helps me a bit, And but I'm still real dark, and things start just to unravel in my life, and it just gets worse and worse until I end up going into a mental hospital, and I stay in a mental hospital for a year, okay, of my life, and it's so dark in this place. Dudes are throwing feces, yelling "F God" as loud as you can for 3 or 4 days straight. I don't even know how it's humanly possible to yell "F God" as loud as you can at the top of your lungs, covered in feces, and nobody's doing anything about it. And so this is the kind of place I was in. It was locked down, 24-hour mental health facility, several of them. And eventually I end up taking things into my own hands. I say, man, I don't want to live anymore. I don't want to go through life anymore. I lost my little brother. I have all these regrets with him. I was too hard on him. The Nisar Square, 17. I'm responsible for 17 civilians getting killed and 30 or 40 more injured with my actions of bringing these guys out there that day. The war and her aftermath, the aftermath of war is so much more painful than war itself. All the stuff that I saw in the hospital. And so I take matters into my own hand, and I end up hanging myself. I end up taking a sheet and I put knots, because it's very difficult to hang yourself in a mental hospital. It's extremely hard. But I found this hole in the wall above the toilet, and I just knotted this sheet up with a bunch of knots, maybe like 50 knots, and real tight. And then I stuffed those knots in that hole. I loaded that hole with the knots and then tied it around my neck, and then got on the toilet. And the last thoughts that were going through my head was how does a man get to this right here? All I ever want to do was serve my country, and it was all BS. It was all the war was all a lie. Baghdad was a lie. Afghanistan was a lie. Everything was a lie, and my whole life becomes this big lie that I've been living, and I'm living this facade, And so I'm like, man, I don't care about nothing else in this life. I'm gonna end my life. And so I get on this toilet, and I can't express how terrible it is to want to live so bad, to want to live, but you're willing to kill yourself. You're willing to end your life. And so I just launched myself off the toilet with the sheet on, and I wake up just like blacking out. I'm go in and out of consciousness, and the nurse, I wake up to this nurse's knee on my neck, which hurt worse than the hanging. And she's screaming, and she's trying to get the sheet off my neck, but she's crushing my neck with her knee. And so it was pretty bad situation. And the doctors are holding my neck. I fractured my neck. They did a CT scan. I ended up doing about a month more there. They let me out. I actually ended up staying in the SEALs after that. I honorably retired. Not that honorable. Honorable's not on a piece of paper anyways, because there's guys that do super honorable stuff, but they get kicked out, and then there's guys that do dishonorable stuff and they look like a Russian general walking out of the SEALs, right? And so retired, and then I end up working for John McAfee. I end up going and working for John McAfee as his bodyguard, and this madman, psychopath, genius guy. And I didn't know anything about him, but I was willing to go there. So he offered me $500 a day, or I told him I charged $500 to $1,000 a day, but I would have done it for whatever. I ended up going in and guarding him as his bodyguard. I ended up being his right-hand man. He takes me in. I go from this super dark, lowest of my life, like waking up in my own piss, getting hung on the, hanging myself, fractured neck, to now a year and a half later, I'm the CEO of John McAfee's company. I went from his bodyguard to his executive advisor to his lead negotiator to his right-hand man to his son. And he started divulging all of his, sometimes these billionaires, they don't have a son or whatever. So he took me in, and I looked at him like a father. And so I looked at him as this father figure in my life, and he groomed me and kind of nurtured me with a tough love. And so now I'm making, 20, 25, 30,000 a day sometimes, and making all this money, making millions of crypto, and then the negotiations we were doing. But I still had that super wild streak in me, and these problems that I had in my life were not were not at all over whatsoever. And so I started doing cocaine. I started up doing speed through nose spray, and I just do whatever. I'll just do whatever, and I'm still operating, his company, and I'm pretty much running the whole thing. And until I have just this complete manic breakdown, and I'm sitting in his office, and I remember I would walk down this dark path at night, and I was searching for God always too. I was like walking down this dirt path, and I was like, God, like these stars are hanging so low. It was beautiful in Ocracoke, North Carolina, where Blackbeard used to evade the British man of wars in the shallows. That's where my office was, this beautiful cherry wood office, massive mansion, and it overlooked this glass pane window, overlooked this beautiful sound, and these boats could pull right up to this John McAfee's mansion. And I had the whole level, the whole deck, my whole office was there, and I was working all the time. And I can remember walking down that path at night and looking at those stars hanging and thinking, man, where are you, God? Like, I'm making all this millions now, but I've had this crazy, crazy life, but I want to feel something else. I want to feel something out of life. I want to squeeze the juice out of life. I want to feel you, God. Like, are you there? And I used to say this on this path. And so one night I'm in his office, and I'm doing my paperwork up there. I'm doing my speed through the nose spray thing that this guy would mix for me. When you're making tons of money, guys do weird stuff for you. They're like, Jimmy, you need some more speed. And you're like, thanks. And you think this guy is the most awesome guy in the world. You think he's the coolest dude in the world because he knows how to mix speed. He knows how to mix drugs up and liquefy it and put it in a nose spray bottle for you, an Afrin bottle. And you think you're being slick Rick too, like McAfee doesn't know. McAfee knew everything. And I'm drinking my $250 a glass scotch, single malt scotch, and I'm up there in my office doing my speed, and I haven't slept in several days, and I have a total manic breakdown. I remember I just heard this voice in his office, and it said, get up and get out now. Get out of this house. It's evil. I heard this voice, and I just stand up, and I write down on a piece of paper, it's over, and I just scoot everything, and I knew it was over. I knew my time was up with McAfee. I was willing to leave everything. He gave me half his gold and silver. It was over here in a big safe, and I just stand up, and I take my shirt off. It's in the dead of winter in North Carolina, and I just run outside, no shoes, nothing. I had my pistol, and I was scared, and I just ran, and I ran into the woods, and I heard gunshots going off. I heard battles going on, like do-do-do-do-do, like M60, do-do-do-do-do, boom, 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 bombs, grenades in the distance, and I just hid, and I hid. And I could hear I could hear John McAfee's guards searching for me all night, and I just sunk myself in this water. And I can remember this. I remember staying there all night long, and it was the coldest night I've ever had. And I've had freezing cold nights in the SEALs, like absolutely freezing. And I don't know how I didn't pass away in this marsh because I'm so cold. I'm just like just shaking so bad the whole night, super hypothermic, and in the morning, I see this beautiful pelican sitting next to me, and the sun comes up, and I'm like, and I come to, and I realize there's no enemy chasing me. There's no firefight out there. There's no guns and stuff going on. And so, oh man, I gotta do this walk of shame back to McAfee's house, back to the mansion, and all the guards are there. My wife is there, and I just come back, and I'm just covered in mud and muck. And I'm just covered in filth. I look like the prodigal son coming back from eating pig slop. And all the guards are just looking at me going, dang, Jimmy, what happened? I'm still the CEO of the company. So they're like, hey, boss, what happened? But they're looking at me like I'm just pure psycho. It was super embarrassing because I came to, and I don't know what happened. And so I have a big falling out with McAfee. I leave everything behind. I get in this massive divorce, and then I find out that they arrest McAfee. They arrest John McAfee and put him in a Spanish prison. And then my parents and my sister tell me that the FBI are looking for me, and I'm getting all these packages sent to my house. And rule number 1: don't ever answer your mail, right? With John McAfee. And so he had like top 10 rules. And so I wasn't touching the mail. And so I knew that I had to flee the country. I knew that I had to go on the run as a fugitive. And so I bounced out of there. I went to Spain. I sailed around all over the place. I got my level certification 4. I started going on major drug binges. I had to pick up mercenary work in Colombia, Medellin. I started doing mercenary work for background Asia, and then mercenary work in Colombia, Medellin, Colombia, San Salvador, Nicaragua, communist country, doing work in and out of there, doing work all over, going on coke binges. And the entire time I'm just like, oh my God, man, my life is just a disaster. Like a super, super jacked up life. And I feel empty. And so I got to go on these big binges and highs. And at one point I went on a 3 or 4 day coke binge by myself. And then I baptized myself in a Colombia, Medellin hot tub. That's how crazy I was. That's how off I was. And then I would get sober and then go do another mission and do this and that out of Medellin, Colombia. And so I know that my time is coming to an end. I know that I'm going to be arrested at some point. Every time I go through customs at the airport, they pull me out of the customs thing, and I don't know if it's because I'm just the only gringo there or what. They think I'm smuggling drugs or something. But they put my bags in the back and they separate me out, and then they keep me there for about an hour, and then they come in and they say, "Oh, we made a mistake, Mr. Watson," and I'm like, "Huh, that's weird," because I got like pills in my bag right now, and they'd always say, "What is this?" And I'd say, "It's antibiotics," and they'd say, "Okay, no problem, Jimmy, go ahead and go." And I'd be like, something ain't right. Something's not right about that. Why do they keep pulling me out? They'll find stuff and they don't care. And so I was about to find out. And so I go home to see my mom, and I say, I'm gonna go home to see my mom one last time. I'm gonna take her to coffee, and then I got my non-extraditionary plane tickets to Bali, which there's no such thing. The FBI told me that later on. And so I'm with my mom, and I'm sitting there, and I'm always anxious because when you're on the run from yourself and from the law, you're it's like the most terrible feeling in the world. Like you're not having a great time. You're not sipping pina coladas. I think the FBI sometimes thinks these guys on the run are having a great time. You're not having a great time. And then you end up watching these true crime documentaries all the time, and you're like, dude, that's gonna be my life. I'm gonna get arrested any moment. And so all I could do was like binge watch Tiger King and try to chill out and calm down. So I go to Thailand. I try out Muay Thai and stuff, and then I'm like, I don't want to get kicked in the face by one of these Thai guys. Forget this. That's a bad idea. End up going home, seeing my mom, go out for coffee in Dallas, Texas. I'm sitting with my mom. I'm super anxious, and I'm super sad because I know it's going to be the last time I ever see my mom. And I say, Mom, I love you so much, but I can't stay here. They're coming after me. I got to go to Bali. I got to go to this non-extraditionary country. And I get this peace all of a sudden. I get this like warm, like hot peace on me. And I'm thinking, did I take something? I'm like, what did I take? Like, what meds did I take? And I'm like, no, I didn't take anything. And I was like, that's weird, like this feeling I have. And I said, Mom, somebody must be praying for me because everything's going to be okay. Because my mom and dad were always praying. They were hardcore, like Pentecostal, believing people. And so I'm like, Mom, somebody's praying for me. I'm telling you. And I stand up, and we're walking to the car, and these SUVs just pull up. And I had delved in with the 1%ers and other things, and hung out with some bad dudes. And so I'm like, I'm getting killed. It's either a hit or it's the law. And this guy pulls up in this black SUV, and he's got the gun, and he's pointing directly at me through the window, and he's tapping on the window, and then he opens it, and he said, Jimmy Watson. He just yelled it like this. And I was like, yeah, and I put my hands like that, like shoot me or whatever you got to do. And because my mom was there, I wanted to block her, and I pushed my mom off to the side. I said, yeah, that's me. And they and they just jumped out all over these plainclothes FBI, bearded out dudes. They came, and the Dallas SWAT team had cordoned off the entire area. And they busted me, man. They got me on the ground. They shook me out. And the guy's sweating on me. His keys fall on my face. And his gun's in my face. And he's got his finger on the trigger. And I'm like, yo, bro. I'm like, bro, get your finger off the trigger, man. I was like, you're going to kill somebody. I said, calm down. You know, because in the SEALs and the teams, man, you're calm as a cucumber all the time. You know, guys don't freak out. Panic is contagious. And so I'm like, yo, chill out, man. Get your finger off the trigger, man. You're going to kill somebody. And I said, and finally they calmed down once they had me. They're like, we got him. We got him. It was like the best day. They're like, we got him. They're like throwing a party, high-fiving each other. Like it's a big deal. I wasn't going to run. I didn't have a gun on me. And I wasn't going to do something crazy. And so they picked me up, shake me out. And they're like, hey, man, I said, why'd y'all come in force? You're like, why'd y'all come in so much force, man? Why don't you just come like to my door, you know? And they said, well, we heard you were a SEAL and you're a flight risk. And I said, okay. And so fair enough. And they're like asking me how many pull-ups I can do. I'm like, take these handcuffs off and I'll show you, you know? And so they were kind of cool after that. I got transferred to a FMC federal prison. And they put me in solitary confinement right away. And I was like, how is this legal? You know what I'm saying? And they ended up putting me in the cell right next to the Tiger King in the same pod, you know? And so that was a cool fact, but very disturbing to say the least, since I had been binge watching him on the run in Thailand. It was just weird, you know, these weird, strange connections. And so they transfer me. So they're trying to transfer me upstate New York and keep me in prison with these 8 felonies or whatever connected to John McAfee. They just want to steamroll and destroy John McAfee. And now I'm in solitary confinement, and I'm not doing push-ups like these guys. I'm not doing burpees. That's me outside of the prison. Now that I'm in solitary, I'm like, man, this is hell, man. This is the worst case scenario. I'm pacing the walls. I'm like, oh my God, how did this happen? I should be in Bali right now. I should be in Bali, man, in a non-extraditionary country. Well, I get sit in front of a Texas judge. The Texas judge, they're like, they want to try to keep me in custody and send me upstate New York pending trial, and I'm going to prison for 15 years now. They said 100% you were going 12 to 15 in the feds for all these 8 felonies. And I say, are you serious, And so they put me in front of the Texas judge. And the Texas judge was like, I'll never forget it. He told the DOJ, he goes, what y'all want to do to this boy? And they're like, we want to keep him and bring him upstate. He's like, nah, we don't do that to our veterans this south of the Mason-Dixie, son. And the DOJ's like, oh my gosh. And I'm over here going, thank God. So on a $5 million promissory bond note, they release me to my house. And I go on house arrest. For a year and a half. And while I'm there on house arrest, I'm at the lowest of lows because I already got a little bitty taste of the feds. And it was a bad place. It looked like a castle. This place looked like a medieval castle. And now I'm just hanging out on house arrest to 100% go to prison for 15 years. And so my life is freaking over. All I can do all day is burpees, man makers, work out, and sit there in my own little pity party. Oh my God, how did this happen, right? And so one night, I'm ready to end it. I'm tired. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so at 3 a.m. in the morning, one night, I woke up and I'm shedding tears everywhere. I'm in like the cold, I'm in sweats, and I just wake up and I scream out, and I said, God, I said, Jesus, because my mom always told me if I was in trouble to scream out Jesus in battle. If I was in trouble, if I was bleeding out, dying on the battlefield, then just to scream out Jesus at the last minute, like just scream out Jesus. And so I'm dying. Proverbially speaking, I'm dying. I'm on this little bitty mat in my mom's house, facing 15 years. I have no reason whatsoever to live. I much rather would have died in Baghdad. In fact, a lot of times I thought I was dead sometimes, and I was just in purgatory after Baghdad. Sometimes I'd have I couldn't separate that reality that perhaps I died in battle and this is my purgatory. Something's wrong with my life. And so I'm having a hard time making that connection with reality. But I lay there and I scream out. I just start screaming, Jesus, man. I said, Jesus, help me. Help me. Not save me from prison. Because I get what I got what I got. In fact, I told the FBI, why didn't y'all arrest me for something I did do? Like this 8 felonies with John McAfee thing, I don't even understand these white-collar crimes. But why don't you arrest me for something I did do? And they said, Jimmy, if you ever make it out of this, you better write a book or grow some tomatoes, man, because you've had a crazy life. And so I scream out at night at 3 a.m. I say, Jesus. And a couple hours later, I don't get much sleep. A couple hours later, I'm pretty distraught. I'm just hanging out in my room. I'm like, how do I kill myself? How do I end my life? They took the guns, they took everything. I'm going to do something crazy. And I get a phone call from Operation Restore Warrior. This guy calls me and he goes, Jimmy, you want to come to Operation Restore Warrior? It's for 3 days. I said, man, I'm on house arrest, bro. I got R2-D2 around my ankle right now, an ankle bracelet the size of a Volkswagen that talks to you. And I'm like, I can't go anywhere. He goes, we don't judge you. And I said, let me ask my lawyer, man, because I'll do anything to get out. I didn't know what Operation Restore Warrior was, this nonprofit. I didn't know. I just wanted to get off house arrest for 3 days. And so the Texas judge allows me to go off house arrest into this organization. And they're watching me like a hawk. They wanted to transfer me upstate. So I go to Operation Restore Warrior. This guy, Paul Lavelle, the owner, he's sitting across the table and he says, Jimmy, are you ready to meet Jesus? And I said, man, y'all don't tell people that. I said, y'all don't actually tell people that, man. He goes, 100%, while you're here, you're going to get direction for your life. You're going to hear from Jesus. He's going to come and touch you. He's going to come and actually like literally save you. And he's going to tell you exactly what you're going to do in your life. And I'm like, this idiot, man. I'm like, this guy, he doesn't realize, did he not see the ankle bracelet on me? Does he not? He doesn't realize I'm going to 15 years in prison. And I said, look, I've done a lot of business negotiations. And one thing I learned with John McAfee is if somebody tells you 100%, they are bull-faced lying to you. There's no way when somebody says 100%, it's going to happen. And so I didn't want to get my hopes up, and I didn't really believe it. He says, okay, you can laugh at us all you want, Jimmy, but that's exactly what's going to happen to you here. And I said, man, these guys are bold. His confidence kind of was magnetizing. And I was like, I don't want to be deceived by his confidence. I don't want him to like hypnotize me either by this kind of confidence. Like, no, you're going to. And I said, we'll see. And I laughed at him and I was mocking him. And I walked outside, and this is my second interaction with God, my second time calling. I walked about 100 yards from the building after this guy told me that Jesus would meet me. And I walked out with this stupid ankle bracelet on. It's overlooking this beautiful this beautiful water, and these ducks are everywhere, these ducks. And I can remember duck hunting as a kid and how beautiful that was. I loved hunting, and I can remember how peaceful it was to go duck hunting. It didn't matter about shooting the duck. It just mattered about wading around in the water in the wee hours of the morning. And so that brought me some peace and remembrance of my childhood. And that was about the only peace I ever had, was when I was real little, hunting and stuff. And I can remember that. And as I walked down this dirt road with the ankle bracelet, I said, God, I said, if it's true, if you're real, then I'm not asking you to, because you got to get in a place in your life where you're not asking to get out of something. You're not asking to get out of prison. I know I was going to prison. I said, God, I don't care about that. I'm not asking you to get out of prison. I'm asking you to show up. If you're real, God, show up in my life right now. Well, then nothing happened. But the next day, 2 guys sat in front of me and started praying for me. And I told God, if you show up in my life, I'll tell 1 person or 1 million the rest of my life. I swear to you. But I don't believe that you're going to show up, because I've cried out to you. I baptized myself after a 3-day coke binge. I've done it all. I've done all the drugs. I've hung out with the worst of the worst dudes. I've done it. I've been ultra violent. I've done very, very violent things in my life. And so I've been there, done that. So I'm not believing really anything. And so the very next day, 2 guys sit in front of me and they said, Jimmy, tell us your story. And I'm like, oh God, not this again. I don't want to tell my story. You guys look like cops. They look like FBI agents. I don't want to talk to you. I don't talk like that. And they're like, don't worry, we're not cops. They got their notepads, and I'm like, bullshit, man, bullshit. And they had to literally convince me that they weren't like police, like just because I thought maybe it was a trick. Like, they brought me here, and so I start telling them my story, like I kind of right now. And they all of a sudden they said, stop right there, Jimmy. You skipped a very important part of your life. And I said, no, I didn't. And I actually had. And they said, no, stop right there. Tell us about the Love Boat or the Love Shack. And when they said that, there's nobody else in the world that could have known that, but maybe a couple guys around me at the time. We nicknamed the McAfee house, that big mansion, the Love Shack. It was actually literally a massive ship, a mansion. It was shaped as a ship in Ocracoke, overlooking that sound. And I stopped and I stood up and I said, I'm out. I said, I'm done. This interview's over. And they said, wait, where are you going, Jimmy? And I said, there's no way you can know that word, Love Shack. That's the nickname I called it. There's no way you could know what we call the house, the Love Boat, but the nickname, I don't know what you're doing here, but I'm out. And they said, Jimmy, calm down. This is what we do. We ask Jesus to come in and do the heavy lifting, and we just kind of parlay what he's saying to us. And I said, oh yeah? I said, okay. I said, if you know so much about my life, if you're actually being spoken to by some entity or Jesus, then I want you to tell me. I said, tell me more about this place. If you know so much. They said, and the one guy looked at the other guy, and he basically gave him the okay. He's like, go ahead. And he goes, okay. He goes, as you walk in to the house through the screen door, there's a hot tub on your right. He said, and then you walk up 3 steps, and there's a door. And then you walked in, and there's a fake door to an armory where you keep all the weapons, a metal door. And there's a cherry door that covers it. And I'm just staring at him. And I'm like, and? That's not, I said, that's not enough. Like that's not enough. And he says, okay, and there's an elevator that's covered by a cherry wood door. He said, and then there's steps that go up here, and then steps that go up here. In the second deck, he said, he's going like this, like there's rooms, and each one of them are labeled with a Latin long, a grid coordinates. And when he said that, every single room in the McAfee house was like Tahiti, Colombia, all these different names. And I'm like, okay. I was like, tell me, and I'm starting to get mad because I'm like, who are you? Is there cameras on me? How do you know this right now? And he's like, this is what we do. And I said, well, then tell me more. Let's go. Tell me more. If you know so much about me in this situation, tell me more. He says, okay, you go up to the 3rd deck and you got this, he goes, you got a big office up there, a beautiful office, cherry wood everywhere. And he says, and you have a massive pirate steering wheel, ship steering wheel on the wall. And I'm just like, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, tell me more. He goes, there's boats that come up to the house. And I was so shocked that he was able to tell me the blueprints of this house. It still wasn't enough. And I said, and I yelled at him in his face. I said, if you know so much, I said, tell me more. And that's the last time I said anything, because he said, there's a house, there's a path that you used to walk down by yourself at night. And when he said that, it brought me back to that time where I was on that path at night with crying out for God, something out there, looking at the stars, asking for him to show up. And when he identified the path that no one else knew about, not even at the house, it was hidden behind these cattail things and the sound. When he identified that path that I walked down, that I screamed out at night, I had no choice but to believe that Jesus was walking with me on that path, that God was with me on that path. And so when he said that, I just broke down and I fell back in my chair, and snot was going all over me. And I just cried and cried because I realized that through my darkest hour, through all my time running from the law, running from myself, and running from everything else in my life, that he was there with me. No matter what a piece of shit that I was, no matter how bad, and I was bad. Like, and I just crumbled down and broke down, and when I stood up, it was like I left 2 sea bags of bricks and concrete behind me that day. And I knew later on, I realized that he did this for 2 reasons, and only 2 reasons. Because of his infinite mercy and power, and because in his love, and because he knew that if he saved me, a terrible, wretched sinner, terrible man, a horrible man, then I would tell people about this the rest of my life. I have no reason. I have no other excuse but to do that. And so as I'm walking out, the same guy that got this download that told me everything about McAfee's house during this very dark time, he says, and oh yeah, one last thing, your case is going to get dismissed. No, I didn't believe that, of course, because I paid my lawyer $50,000 to tell me I was going to prison for life, right? 15 years of my life. And but when I got home, and he said, checkmate, Jimmy. All I got is checkmate for you. And I said, what does this checkmate mean? He said, haven't you ever played chess? He says, it just means your case is going to dismiss. And so I go home, and my lawyer calls me, and the first thing my lawyer says when I go back on house arrest is he says, Jimmy, he goes, I hope you're sitting down. And I said, what? Because I'm always getting bad news. I'm always used to bad news. I was like, what? And he said, checkmate. And I said, what did you say? He says, haven't you ever played chess, Jimmy? He said, it means you won. Or it means your case is getting dismissed. And I said, that's what they told me. I said, Jesus told me this and all this stuff. And he's like, Jimmy, are you in a bar? Are you doing drugs? You can't do drugs on parole. And I was like, no. I went to this place and they told me the same thing. Anyways, my case got dismissed. And God told me I'd be a lighthouse unto his people. And through that message, many people would be healed. And so that's why I'm here today. And that's what I'm doing now on my social media and through my coaching program and in my group where people are gathering all around.
You became a believer.
I have no choice but to believe. I don't go to church. I never was big on that. My parents made me go, and I got sick of it. I got sick of the preachers asking for money. It just disgusts me, you know? Like, it's cringe. It's cringe, you know? All this stuff you see on TV, you're like, come on, man, please. And, I tried to buy a lighthouse once for McAfee. He wanted a lighthouse. And I said, why? Why do you want a lighthouse? And he said, because it's the safest place in the world. Well, I found out over a year period when I was trying to buy this lighthouse for John McAfee that you can't buy one. Maybe if you're Elon Musk, of course, you can buy one. But you can't buy a lighthouse. They're on federal property. They're taken care of. Very, very difficult to buy a lighthouse, a nice one. And something that was told to me by God himself, man, when I was out there. He said, you're going to be a lighthouse to my people. I heard that. I literally heard that. And he said, and I said, well, what do lighthouses do? Because I was like, this is a new revelation. It's just like that guy Paul Lavelle said. Jesus was going to tell me what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And I said, what does a lighthouse do? I'm going to go Google that. And I wrote down lighthouse in my little notebook. And he said, why would you Google that? Just ask me. And I said, well, what does a lighthouse do, God? And I literally heard, you know all about lighthouses. And the first thing I remember about lighthouses were they weren't for sale. And he said, neither is my word. Neither is my word. And that's it.
Beautiful story. Crazy story.
Crazy story.
How old are you now?
43 years old. I'm 43 years old.
Lost your wife.
Lost my wife. Had to go bankrupt. Had to start all over. I'm newly married. I got a 5-month-old boy. God is a redeemer of time. It says he'll restore the years the cankerworm has eaten. And that's my whole message. I never thought in a million years, 2 years ago, I was going to prison. I lost everything.
What kind of stuff were you doing with McAfee that was going to put you in prison?
Millions and millions and millions of dollars of conspiracy, racketeering,
leader of an organization, which puts the charges and time in prison for a long time, money laundering, wire fraud, crypto touting. The only thing that I wasn't charged with alongside McAfee was tax evasion, you know. And that amount of money carried a really heavy sentence with it. And the same guys that went after Wolf of Wall Street, the Southern Manhattan District, were going after me. They said they were like the SEALs of the DOJ, and they weren't messing around.
Do you have any regrets in your life?
I have a lot of regrets. My biggest regret is not loving more. I always resorted to violence. I always resorted to, you know, like just boot on neck policy. I didn't hug my brother long enough the last time I seen him, and you never know when the last time you're gonna hug your loved one, and we were estranged for a while, for a couple of years, because he was wild, I was wild, and I showed too much tough love in my life. Like, get it together, man. Like what's wrong with you? Well, who am I to say that? Like, I came from nothing. I came from a little nobody, scrawny, little bitty guy with no athleticism, no intellectual. And then once I had all that, then I forgot about that gap of space. I forgot about all the shoulders of giants that I was standing on, all the people that helped me along the way, all the encouragement I got along the way. But instead, I reciprocated that in a very angry and aggressive way with people. And I forgot that touch of love, and that's my regrets, is not loving enough. Not loving my brother, not loving people more, because you never know if it's the last time you're going to see him.
How did he die?
He died of, the detective told me when he talked to me on the phone, he said, "Do you ever know your brother to huff aerosol cans?" And I was like, "No, not Dan." I knew that he had done that before, but he had been clean for a year, and he was doing great, and he had all this stuff together, and he was doing awesome. But he resorted to huffing because you couldn't smell it on you, and he was an older guy, you know, at the time, they said, well, we found 8 cans next to the bed, tied up in his clothes, next to the bed, and I told him if he did that again, he would probably die. Yeah.
So your life's all better now?
My life is completely better now, redeemed, considering that I should be in behind bars right now, you know, for a long, long time. For a long time. My life is completely changed, you know. And I live in Miami. I have a beautiful life, a beautiful, beautiful wife. I have a 5-month-old boy. Things literally couldn't be better in my life now. And the money's back, everything's back through the mighty hand of God, through the power of God.
What are you doing for work?
I do accountability coaching. I do mentoring. I run a group of solid guys. People can go to www.jimmywatson.co and check me out there. They can join there. It's a spiritual awakening. It's mind, body, spirit, soul, and it's an all men's group. Because I don't even pretend to know how to speak to women in that regards. But guys are coming in. It's accountability. It's a SEAL mindset. That warrior. That you know, masculinity bestows masculinity. Iron sharpens iron, only at the right angle. You know, we don't know what we don't know. And so this I would never have joined this group when I was at my craziest because I was too prideful. But the guys that joined this group, man, it's life-changing. They're seeing life-changing stuff. And I hope everybody gets to check it out.
You got a major break?
Major break. I have no... This man right here that you're looking at has no excuses. I can't say I did it. I've seen too much. I've been too humbled, too ground down by the system and by possibly the hand of God saying you can't do nothing on your own. You can do nothing on your own.
So it sounds like you're a believer, but you're not 100% a believer.
I'm a 100% believer.
You are.
But I just know that I can't. I know that I can't do it on my own. I know that, it's not by power. It's not by might. It's not by my muscles, not by my tattoos, not by my looks, not by my money, not by my Lambo, not by this, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. It's all His power, and through His power. Through Him, I can run through a troop. I can leap over a wall. King David said in the Bible, he said, he heard my cry. He leaned his ear in. He heard my cry. He delivered me out of a terrible, terrible pit. He washed me of my filth and the miry clay off me, and He set my feet on a rock to stay, and He gave me a new song. And I used to read that chapter in some of my darkest times, and I thought, man, is this stuff true? And then when that happened to me, the exact same thing happened to me. I cried out in truth. I cried out in truth, not asking to get out of prison. I cried out in truth. God, save me, help me, or I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm going to prison. I'm dead. I'm dead inside. You don't have to be dead to be a walking dead, man. You don't have to be. And so He delivered me out of that pit. He washed me off, and He gave me a new song in my mouth. And after that experience, I was like an eagle flying over the Grand Canyon. I could have gone to prison, and I would have been the same way. Like I was just like when I went back home on house arrest from that experience, I was like an eagle flying over the Grand Canyon. I was elated. My family thought I went to some church camp and did mushrooms. Like that's how crazy, I was that guy, you know what I mean? So I had to calm it down a little bit.
Very interesting story.
Yeah.
All right, Jimmy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, man.
Thank you.
Even though Soft White Underbelly consists of a lot of videos, it's really still a photography project to me. And if you appreciate the photography, sometimes it's difficult to enjoy it when it's scrolling down the screen, which is the only option I had in this horizontal format on YouTube. So last year we came out with the first Soft White Underbelly book, which is a collection of the best portraits from the thousands of interviews I've done. Each portrait in this book is accompanied by an interesting quote from the person's interview.
Oh my God.
There's more.
Wow. These aren't as bad as I thought. I look like a witch.
I will not be reprinting this book when it sells out. So once it's gone for good. You can order yours at softwhiteunderbelly.org. $125, $150 for a signed copy. And thank you for watching.